Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Do Ministry Gaming, and today I'm going to be walking you through the self-cursed Blade Vortex Occulist character that I've been playing for the last couple of weeks and doing the 100% Delirious YouTube content with. This is by far the best mapping character that I've ever played in terms of speed and power, and it's enabled me to do the 100% Delirious content that I usually struggle with on other more average characters. However, the character is not a very good boss killer when you're not buffed, so the likes of Cyrus and Elder can be quite difficult. The character is also very expensive to make with a minimum cost of probably about 100 exalts, and the character that you see in the video right now is a little over 200 exalts. With that said, if you have the currency and would like a buttery smooth, fast-paced mapping experience, then this could be the character for you. Alright, so now I'm going to walk you step by step through my character now. Now, first thing to mention is this certainly is not a unique character. There are other build guides out there for this exact same character. As a matter of fact, I keyed off of Cute Dog's as well as Asmodeus's two self-cursed Blade Vortex guides. So check those out if you're curious. Basically, my character is a little bit of a combination of the two. And I kind of tried to take what works for me from each of those guides and put them into my character. So to quickly go over the concept of the build, what you are doing is you're cursing yourself with Temp chains, hence self-curse Blade Vortex, and you're using your items and your passive tree in order to increase the curse effectiveness up to a maximum of 175%. And the reason why you want to do that is really the second last line on the Temp chains skill gem itself, which says other effects on cursed enemies expire 40% slower. So when you have Temp chains cursed on yourself, effects will expire 40% slower, and then you improve it by 175% curse effectiveness, meaning effects on you will expire much slower than that. And the idea is when you have that, you're going to start stacking Headhunter buffs, Shrine buffs, really any buff that you can get off the map, and stack it throughout the map, and it should last long enough for you to actually clear the entire map before it actually starts to wear out. And that is where all of your power really comes from. To quickly show you what I mean about curse effectiveness, I'm going to put my gem back in, and in the character menu, you can select the skill Temp chains. You can maneuver to the miscellaneous tab, and the second line here that says curse effect modifier, you want this to read 175% between your skill tree and your items, and this is the cap. You can also find this number on PoB. If you use my PoB link in the description below, in the calc section under Temp chains. And you want that one to read 2.75, so 175% on top of the 1. All right, so I'm going to go over the gem setup now. The first is the Temp chains. I've explained why you want to run this, and what you want to link to this is Herald of Thunder, Hex Touch, or Awakened Hex Touch if you can afford it, and Enhance. And now why you want to link these is Herald of Thunder will allow it to proc the curse. So basically Herald of Thunder with Hex Touch will attack the enemy. It'll attempt to curse the enemy. And by using the gloves, which I'll explain when I go over the equipment, it will reflect that curse back onto you instead of cursing the enemy. And so Hex Touch combination with Herald of Thunder will let you do that. The Enhance is here to improve the quality of the gem. If you look at the gem itself, quality to Temp chains increases effect of curse by 0.5% per quality. And so what you want to do is you want to make that as high as possible. So Enhance actually adds another 24% quality to your gem, which effectively adds 12% effective curses to you. And remember, you want that effect number to be up to 175%. For the actual damage that you're going to be doing with your character, I'm running Blade Vortex right now. That's why it's called Self-Cursed Blade Vortex. You can actually run this in a variety of ways to do damage. Doesn't matter. All the buffs from Headhunter is really what gives you your juice. And so people can run Wanders, are quite popular, but you can really do it with anything that can get you at least killing a few enemies at the beginning of the map, like even EK even. So it's whatever floats your boat. Blade Vortex is very popular and very fun because you really just take it and you run around the map. You don't even have to really click, so it plays like Cyclone. So it's very popular, and I really like it for the speed. But what you do is you link the Blade Vortex with a level 4 Empower for more damage, the Unleash for the you know, ease of stacking the Blade Vortex up to 10, Inspiration for more damage, Controlled Destruction for damage, and then Fizz to Lightning for elemental conversion and really damage. There are builds out there that run this complete fire with full fire conversion, and instead we'll run here Combustion Gem, but I'm running Fizz to Lightning here instead. So for my auras, I'm running Anger and Herald of Ash as my primary auras. They are both fire. I did have the intention of running fire eventually on this character. I'm just missing a Watcher's Eye to allow me to convert physical to fire, but I'm just being particularly picky about that Watcher's Eye because it's one of the last items I can get on this character, so I'm waiting sort of for the perfect one. Until then, I'm running that Fizz to Lightning on Blade Vortex, but eventually I do plan on running full fire, and so I just have Anger and Herald of Ash. Herald of Ash is great for the clear. Anger, I mean, if you're not running full fire, you can really run Wrath or any type of added damage here. I am also running a third aura, the Herald of Purity, for more physical damage on the Blade Vortex. But by default, you can't actually run all three of these heralds. You're not going to have enough mana reservation. So you do not only need to run Enlighten 4, but you also need to take a little bit more mana reservation somehow through the tree. And so I've done that, and so I have enough to run the Herald of Purity for the extra juice. So finally, just some added utility gems. The first is Flame Dash for the mobility. The next is Vol Grace. I would highly recommend this. You do not run the Grace as an aura. You don't need to reserve any mana. You're literally using it just for the Vol Grace. And you really want to pop it anytime it's up. And the reason is the base duration of Vol Grace is 6 seconds, but because it's self-curse, it lasts much longer than that, like all of your other buffs. And so you're going to have it pretty much up the entire map. And so that's highly recommended. One other one that falls in the same category that I'm not using that a lot of people do is Vol Righteous Fire. Same reasoning for the extra damage. Then you can run Immortal Call. The great thing about Immortal Call is you can put it into your left click so you're moving, and then it just always casts whenever it's off cooldown just as you're moving. It's an instant cast. It's really nice that way. You don't have to manage it at all. You don't have to think about it. The one downside is, of course, it's not always on when you absolutely need it because it's so automatic, but just because it's so convenient, I prefer to play it that way. You can, if you choose to, manual cast it, of course. Nothing's stopping you from doing that, but I like to have it on my left click. And finally, a portal just for the convenience. You're going to have an extra couple gem slots open, so you can run that Vol Righteous Fire if you want. You can run an increased duration for your Grace. Not that you need that, or really, like I say, I haven't needed the Vol Righteous Fire either. So there's some utility gems that you can think about. All right, so I'm going to go over my gear now. I'm going to tell you what is absolutely mandatory for this build and what are nice to haves for this build. So make sure you pay a little bit of attention to that. For example, the gloves. I'm going to start with the gloves. The gloves are mandatory. The reason is for the first line there, hexes are reflected back to you. Curses are reflected back to you. And these gloves must have a minimum of blue, green for you to put Temp Chains, Herald of Thunder, and Hex Touch. That is how Temp Chains gets reflected back to you. Non-negotiable, it must have. Now, it doesn't have to have the fourth green necessarily, because you can drop the Enhance if you want, as long as you can make up that 12% curse effectiveness elsewhere, which you can through the tree or cluster jewels. You don't necessarily need Enhance, but blue, green, Shackles of Wretched is mandatory. Now, this next one, curse enemies with elemental weakness on hit, corrupt. It is not mandatory for you to get started with this build. This is a nice to have. And I would say you're good without it all the way up to 80% Delirium tier 14 to 16 red maps. Okay, so unless you plan to run the cemeteries or the barrel chambers 100% Delirious, you do not need this corrupt on the gloves. It just makes it incredibly, incredibly expensive, but you can get that LE weakness on hit on your rings as well as a starter build. So the next one is very quick. Headhunter, absolutely mandatory. That is the point of this build. You are stacking Headhunter buffs to the moon, and you're trying to make them last as long as you can for the entire map. Non-negotiable. Next is the Combs Roots. It is basically mandatory, and the reason for that is unwavering stance. Action speed cannot be modified below base value. If you do not have these and you have temp chains cursed on yourself at 175% curse effectiveness, your character is not moving, okay? So this is what prevents the temp chains from owning you, and allows you to move. Now, technically, there is another way to get this. You can run a 4-link regular boot and run Animate Guardian in this. And with the Animate Guardian, you need to have the Garb of the Ephemeral armor. There are people who run that style. You can do it. But if your Animate Guardian ever runs out of range, it just gets a little clunky because you're going to be going slow, fast, slow, fast. It's just going to feel like you're getting jerked around. So I personally prefer Combs Roots, but you can also run Garb of the Ephemeral, Animate Guardian if you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to jump up to the Helm here really quick. For the Helm, you're going to want 30% increased Temp Chains Curse Effect Enchant. Everything else is optional, but I think the enchant is mandatory. But again, the goal is to get to 175 Curse Effectiveness. If you can get there without the enchant, good on you. Otherwise, on the Helm, you know, get some resist. It's very hard to get resist in this build because you only have a couple of rare items, so make sure you get some resist on there. Some life is nice to have. You don't really need that much life on this build, but definitely get the resist. On mine, I've got max power charges, LE damage, and nearby enemies have fire resistance. Those are all nice to haves, and in particular, they are nice to haves for the beginning of the map when you're really weak without the buffs. It's really hard to get started oftentimes, and so all those things really help me get going. Next, I'm going to jump down to the necklace, run the Solstice Vigil. This is also mandatory, and the reason is the last line there, gain Shaper's Presence when you kill a rare or unique enemy, and what Shaper's Presence does is effects on you and nearby enemies expire 20% slower, and so basically it's just an extra on top of what your temp chain is already doing. And then for the enchant, or the, anointment, I am personally running Hexmaster. Hexes have 80% increased skill effect duration is the important part. With it, your temp chains will last 12 seconds. Without it, it's going to last much less, maybe 7 or 8 seconds, something like that. And so that extra 4 seconds is very, very nice to have. Highly recommended. You're pathing very close to Hexmaster also, so if you wanted to, you can also path to it on the skill tree, like I'll show in a bit here, but I'm running it as the anointment instead. So this is my bow. You socket your Blade Vortex into your bow, a 6-link essentially, and then you just try to scale the damage up as much as possible. In my case, I'm running +1 socketed gems, spell damage, which is the Essence Craft, crit multi, and then multi-mod +2 socketed gems, and double damage. Now that's one way to do it. The other way is you can get a bow with +1 dex gems, +1 strength gems, and then you get the +1 socketed gems, +2 support gems. Basically, you're scaling the gem levels to Kingdom Come and scaling the damage that way. But in my case, I'm running the spell damage and the crit multi. Either works. They're both very comparable. Hopping over to the quiver, this Signal Fire quiver is very nice for basically 2 reasons. One is a 50% fizz damage converted to fire, and you're basically doing that and scaling the elemental damage. And then the second is the gain fizz as extra fire. 35% is a lot. This is what I'm using. The next level of this quiver is to have the corrupt or the double corrupt. That gives you gain elemental damage or gain fizz as some type of elemental damage, whether it's fire, cold, lightning, or random. So look for those quivers. Those are incredibly expensive. I'm not needing to go to that level. But if you want that extra damage, that's what you're going to want for your quiver. Okay, so for one ring, I'm running Circle of Anguish. This is a very particular one. Having Herald of Ash buff effect is very good on these rings. And then for me, the second one, I've chose to run Resist while I'm affected by Herald of Ash. The more popular one for damage is increased damage while you're running Herald of Ash. But I'm using Resistance because Resistance, like I say, is quite hard to get on the gear without spending a ridiculous amount of money. So I'm using this ring to supplement my fire resist. Basically, with the Herald of Ash on my fire, this ring alone covers off my fire resist. And then I've got the implicits strength and dex, which I needed without allocating extra points on my skill tree to use my skills. So for my other ring, it's very simple. You just want really as much resist as you can get on this. I also run flammability on hit, and that's because I can curse both with flammability and elemental weakness on the enemies. But like I mentioned before, this is really only necessary for 100% Delirious tier 14 to 16 red maps. Literally any other mapping content up to that point, you could probably do with just one curse, one either flammability or elemental weakness. So if you don't want to pay, I don't know how much the gloves are. They were 25x when I bought them. If you don't want to pay that price tag, you can just run the regular gloves and either run flammability or elemental weakness on your ring. That should be enough to get you going on basically any content other than the end game content. So, you know, you can do that and look for as much resist as you can get to round out your resistances, and a little bit of life never hurts. Finally, for the chest piece, you do really want to run an explodey chest piece. It does make things clear a lot better. Otherwise, what you're looking for on the chest is really just more resist, like I say, and even some life if you can get it, or any type of survivability. So for the flasks, there are many options that you can run here. All of them are very good. So what I'm running here is at Zeri's Promise. Very important for the chaos resist, but also for all the extra damage that you're getting. The 20% fizz as chaos, as well as elemental as chaos. So this is both a huge damage flask and a very critically needed chaos resist. Now, a flask work the same as buffs, by the way. All your flask durations will last a lot longer because of your self-cursed temp chain setup. So this at Zeri's effect promise will last longer. And I'm just going to skip to the fourth flask even here because it becomes really relevant for this flask. And this is the Replica Rumi's Concoction. I would highly recommend it on this build. It's a very strong flask. It's, in my case, 49% to block attack and 30% chance to block a spell, and you get an endurance charge. Now you do get petrified, but in this case you won't, because you're running Comb's Roots, so you can't be affected by the petrification. And then also the other downside usually with this flask is reduced duration. So you can see even at 20% quality, it's 1.2 seconds. Now fortunately with the self curse, that makes it last, you know, 4 times longer or whatever. So it's gonna last like 5 or 6 seconds. So this is an incredibly powerful flask, in my opinion, for survivability, with only this build in particular, which negates both of the negative effects on this flask. Now, beyond that, I'm running also a Cinder Swallow flask. This is very good for the onslaught, the crit chance, as well as the recovery. I would highly recommend that. And then for myself, I'm also running a Seething Divine Life Flask. It's just my personal playstyle. I basically feel like I need to have it just for a sense of comfort. So I have that, not necessary though. And then I have a Quicksilver. I've removed bleeding on both just because sometimes I do feel like maybe switching one out. But the staunching is quite nice. If I were to permanently make these my permanent flasks, then I would roll one of them to have dousing. Ignite is kind of a pain in the ass in this build as well. So bleeding and ignite, you basically want to be able to mitigate. I guess that will leads me to other options for these flasks that are also very good. So Dying Sun is very good. And like I said, because Ignite is kind of sometimes a problem. 20% less fire damage taken is quite nice on the Dying Sun. As well, you're getting Area of Effect, which is very nice for your Blade Vortex, for your Herald of Ash clears, for your Explodey, for the screen clear, basically. So Dying Sun is also very nice, especially if you're running short on fire resist. Also, if you're not running resist on your Circle of Anguish, you're running damage instead. This can be a very good way to supplement that. And then finally, the Wise Oak. Same thing. If you're short on resist, you can top up with this very nicely. But then also, of course, the damage penetration is quite nice on this flask. And with it lasting like 20 seconds, you have no worries about keeping this up or any of these flasks up full time during the map. All right, so I'm going to go over the skill tree and the Ascendancies now. So first of all, the Ascendancy, you're going to be running Occultist for these four, and I would go Malediction first. So for Malediction, you're getting the additional curse, the effective curses to help you get to the 175, and Malediction is quite nice as well. You're basically taking 10% reduced damage and doing 10% more damage. So very nice node overall for your build here. The next I would get is Profane Bloom. Profane Bloom basically lets you curse hexproof enemies, so you don't have to worry about that, and then gives you another layer of Explodey. The third priority I would get here is Forbidden Power, which juices up your power charges and gives you additional power charge. Now, this one I think is quite important. Power charges is a very strong way for you to actually power up your character at the beginning of the map before you actually get any buffs. The beginning of the map is usually the roughest, okay? So you're always going to be struggling there, and this is a way of helping you get over that hump. And then finally, get Val Bastion. You don't even really need this, but this just gives you some ES and cannot be stunned, which you cannot be stunned anyway with Calm's Roots, but, you know, it's just some nice utility to have. So that is priority number 4. All right, so for the skill tree, there's really only 3 or 4 things going on in the skill tree. So the first I'll talk about is the cluster jewels, okay? So really you want to run 2 sets of cluster nodes. You can run a third. You're really starting to stretch yourself thin in terms of skill points at that point. So I wouldn't recommend it. You don't need it. You can do with 2 just fine. So, and the setup in the 2 are basically very similar to each other. So I'm going to walk you through it. Basically 1 large cluster jewel, 2 medium cluster jewels, and sort of 2 jewels at the end. So what I've opted to go for the cluster jewels, for the large ones, is Prismatic Heart, Vengeful Commander, and Widespread Destruction. Prismatic Heart gives you elemental damage as well as all resist. Vengeful Commander gives you aura buff on your anger, and then Widespread Destruction gives you a little bit of nice AoE there. But really, the large cluster jewel, there's nothing on here that's absolutely mandatory. These are all just nice to have. Now, for the medium cluster jewels, this is where a lot of your skill effect comes from. So every jewel, you're going to run 4 of these medium cluster jewels, okay? So what I recommend is every single jewel comes with Dark Discourse. Okay, first of all, they're all 3% increased effect of your curses, okay? Jewels. And then you're going to want the Dark Discourse notable for all 4 of them, which gives you 10% effect of your curses. So times 4 is 40%. That's primarily what you're getting it for. And then the other one, I'm actually going to show you these ones over here first. The other ones that you want to get is Whispers of Death. So Whispers of Death gets you 5% effective recurses. Now you can run 4 of these and just be done, and you're going to have a lot of curse effectiveness. But if you're min-maxed, you don't need to run 4 to get to 175. However you want to get there, I'm at 175, and I'm only running 2 Dark Discourse and Whispers of Death jewels, okay? For the other 2, because I don't need Whispers of Death, I've opted to run Wish for Death on this one. And Wish for Death is nice. It gives me Culling Strike against cursed enemies, which is every enemy. So Culling Strike. And then Master of Fear on this one. Master of Fear is very nice. It gives Unnerved, which is 10% increased spell damage, which is basically 10% more damage multiplier. And then finally, on the jewels at the end, you're really just getting damage at this point. So For my case, basically my jewels are all the same. I found one type of crit chance, one type of crit multi, and max life. These are kind of a nice balance between affordable and powerful. Of course, you can get 4 damage nodes on these. They are very expensive, so I'm not doing that. But all mine are crit, crit multi, and life. So I'm going for those jewels. All right, so the second key thing to talk about on this tree is this jewel node here and this jewel node on the right here. Basically, you're coming to these two and grabbing all the notables around it, primarily to run inspired learning. So for those who don't know what inspired learning is, it's a jewel when you have 4 notables in the range, notables being these sort of medium level skills. If you have 4 of those allocated, you get the inspired learning effect, and the effect is basically a mini headhunter. Okay, when you kill a rare monster, instead of stealing all of its modifiers, you're going to randomly get one of its modifiers for 20 seconds. And yes, they do stack with each other, so I'm running 2, and yes, they do stack with headhunter. And the reason why you want to run these on top of the headhunter, you don't have to, but the reason is it's going to help you get ramped up much faster. Okay, so the idea is you're very weak at the beginning and you get stronger as you get headhunter buffs. So the faster you can get headhunter buffs, the less amount of risk you're gonna be taking at the beginning of the map. So I'm running 2. 2 seems to be a sweet spot. You can run 3, but you're really stretching yourself very thin on your skill tree and your points. So, and 1 just doesn't seem quite as good. So 2 is very good. So for this jewel here, I am running Militant Faith. And what Militant Faith does is it converts a keystone into Inner Conviction if it's High Templar Dominus. Okay, so you got to get High Templar Dominus Militant Faith. That will make this keystone Inner Conviction. And what Inner Conviction does is it gives you 3% more spell damage per power charge, and you're gaining power charges instead of frenzy charges. The 3% more spell damage is very powerful. I said I have 8 power charges. So at the beginning of the map, I'm charging 8 power charges, and when I have 8, I've got 24% more spell damage from that. So this is the way I power up my character before I actually get all my headhunter charges. So I find that Militant Faith is very good. You don't have to run this by any means, but I like to. Also, the you can get 4% increased elemental damage per 10 devotion. I have 60 devotion, so that's just a little bit bonus damage as well. And then finally, I did path over here to the left. So what you need to know about the left here is this particular jewel socket, Transcendent Flesh. It gives 7 crit multi per 10 strength unallocated. There's a lot of unallocated strength in this circle. I think this works out to, I can't remember, 50 or 75 crit multi from this one jewel. So it's a lot of damage just from this one jewel. And since you're over here, you can also grab the power charge. You can grab this cluster here, which is the Sovereignty Reduced Mana cluster. This helps me get that Herald of Purity more damage aura on. And then just some Chaos Resist, which is super nice, along with the life over here. And then a nice little tight cluster here, Arcane Potency, which is crit chance and crit multi. So I really liked coming over here. You don't have to. A lot of people don't. I mentioned before, this is a combination of Cute Dog and Asmodeus's guides. So Asmodeus passes over here. Cute Dog does not. Cute Dog actually passes down here and grabs acrobatics and whatnot for survivability. So I personally just like coming over here myself. I find that there's a lot of utility over here. Otherwise, that's really all there is to talk about for the tree. There's not much else going on. I come up here for the power charge nodes. Like I say, power charges are so important at the beginning to get juiced. I grab this increase of curse effect for 1 point. There's a crit multi cluster up here that I grab for that damage. And while you're down over here, you just kind of grab these notables here that are all very good. Lethal Assault is damage area. Fangs of the Viper is damage, movement speed, assassination, crit multi, crit chance. So all very good stuff here. Otherwise, yeah, the last thing is I've talked about Hexmaster as my anointment. you know, like I say, I'm only 2 points away from actually getting it. 2 points. These 2 points are not useful. So you're kind of wasting 2 points. But if you really wanted to, you can just path into it. And then another popular option for an anointment, Magnetic Strikes, is a very good option. Basically, gain Fizz as Fire, some fire conversion, which can be hard to get to full Ellie, and then increase fire damage. I didn't like that as much. I much prefer anointing my Hexmaster, and Hexmaster is a very, very highly recommended notable. All right, so I'm just quickly gonna show you what I mean by charging up your character at the beginning of the map. So I'm standing in my hideout, I've got all my auras on, and as you can see, my tooltip Blade Vortex is 12,000, okay? When you get into the maps, what you wanna do is charge your character. Don't run into the map and start the character this way, okay? And I'm gonna show you exactly why. So I'm at 12,000 standing here, and I'm just gonna start charging up. There's 3 things you wanna charge up. So the first is obviously your Blade Vortex. You want to get that up to 10. Then the next is your inspiration charges. That needs to be up to 5. And then the last is your power charges. And if you recall, from the Ascendancy, every 200 mana I spend, I'm getting 1 power charge. In my case, I've got 8 maximum. And as you can see here, when I'm fully buffed, I'm at 180,000, 185,000 damage versus 12,000. So when you're starting the map, make sure you stand at the portal and just charge up until you're max everything and then start to kill. And then once you get those first 2 packs down, first 3 packs down, your Headhunter buffs are going to start to take over, and then the rest of the map is just going to be butter. Alright, so finally for the Pantheon, I do run Soul of Lunaris as well as Soul of Ritzlatha. These are pretty much my 2 go-tos for pretty much any character, but obviously there are a lot of other good options as well, so pick the one that works for you. And then for the Bandits, get the 2 skill points. Alright everybody, that should be everything you need to know about the Self-Cursed Blade Vortex Occulist character. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. I also stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Times are in the description below. If you have any questions about this character or how to set it up, or any of my other YouTube content, as a matter of fact, feel free to stop by my stream and ask, or leave a comment below. Otherwise, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.